How did a barefoot kid picking avocados in rural Mexico become the most wanted man in the Western Hemisphere? How did a guy who couldn't finish 5th grade build a criminal empire that stretched from Guadalajara to Tokyo, put a $15 million bounty on his own head, and made El Chapo look like a regional manager? That's the story we're telling today. This is the entire story of El Mencho. Let's go back to the beginning. July 17, 1966. A baby boy is born in Culotitlan, a tiny village buried deep in the municipality of Aguililla, Michoacán, a rugged, sweltering region of western Mexico, known for two things: avocados and violence. His name is Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes. Nobody calls him that. For now, he's just one of 6 brothers growing up in a farmhouse with dirt floors and not much else. His parents, Miguel and Jacoba, work the avocado fields every day of their lives. The kids go to school when they can. Nemesio makes it to 5th grade. Then he stops. Not because he's stupid, because the fields need workers and the family needs money. At 14 years old, he's already guarding marijuana plantations for local growers tied to the Valencia family, the same family that will one day spawn one of Mexico's most powerful cartels. Nobody plans to become a drug lord at 14. But when that's the economy around you, you don't think about it as a choice. By his late teens, Nemesio has figured out that Michoacán has a ceiling, and it's low. So he does what millions of Mexicans did in the 1980s. He crosses the border, illegally. He ends up in California, specifically the San Francisco Bay Area, and he's not there long before he finds his people. His brother-in-law, Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, is already running methamphetamine and heroin out of California's Central Valley. Nemesio plugs in. In 1986, he gets his first arrest, stolen property, and carrying a loaded gun. Not exactly the origin story of a future kingpin, but everyone starts somewhere. In 1989, he gets popped again in San Francisco for selling narcotics, deported to Mexico. But here's the thing about El Mencho. He doesn't quit. He comes back. In 1992, he's arrested again in Sacramento. This time, he does 3 years in a U.S. federal prison. In 1994, he's convicted of conspiracy to distribute heroin. When he gets out, he gets deported again. For the second and final time. Most people would consider 2 deportations a sign from the universe. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes sees a redirect. He lands back in Mexico and does something that, in retrospect, is either brilliant or insane. He becomes a cop, a municipal police officer in Jalisco. Let that sink in. The man who will one day order the assassination of police commanders, shoot down military helicopters with rocket launchers, and force the entire city of Guadalajara to shut down, was once on the payroll of the state. Nobody knows exactly how long he wore the uniform, but what's clear is that during this period, he's learning. Learning how law enforcement operates, learning where the gaps are, learning who can be bought and who can't. And quietly, he's reconnecting with the underworld. By the late 1990s, he's fully back in the game. He goes to work for Armando Valencia Cornelio, nicknamed El Maradona, because of course he is, as a hitman and enforcer. He's good at it. Good enough to get noticed by bigger players. He makes his way into the orbit of the Milenio Cartel, a powerful trafficking organization tied to the Valencia family. And eventually, he lands a job working security and enforcement for Ignacio Nacho Coronel, one of the top capos in the Sinaloa cartel.
Was the most powerful cartel leader who has been killed.
The Mexican army says it has killed the leader of the country's most powerful drug cartel.
The most violent and fastest growing drug organizations.
El Mencho is now operating in Jalisco and Colima on behalf of the most powerful drug organization in Mexico. He's still not the main character yet, but he's building the resume. Then 2009 arrives and everything changes. The Mexican government captures Oscar Orlando Nava Valencia, the boss of the Milenio cartel. A year later, in 2010, Nacho Coronel gets killed in a military operation. two pillars of the power structure that El Mencho operated under, gone within a year. In the vacuum that follows, the Milenio cartel fractures. Two factions emerge, Los Torcidos on one side, La Resistencia on the other. El Mencho leads Los Torcidos. They fight, they win, and then, in a move that announces their presence to all of Mexico, Los Torcidos rename themselves. They are now the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, the CJNG. El Mencho is 43 years old. He has just founded what will become the most dangerous cartel in the Western Hemisphere. Now here's where his wife, Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, becomes essential to the story. Because this is not just a love story, it's a corporate merger. Rosalinda is the sister of Abigail Gonzalez Valencia, the brother-in-law who brought Mencho into the California drug trade back in the 80s. Abigail runs Los Quines, a family-based cartel that controls the financial and logistical infrastructure in Michoacan. By being married to Rosalinda, El Mencho doesn't just have a wife. He has a CFO, a supply chain, and a distribution network. As one analyst put it bluntly, El Mencho reached the top not just through violence, but through strategic marriage. In the cartel world, the right family connection is worth more than any gun. The CJNG comes out of the gate like nothing Mexico has seen before. They are not subtle. In 2011, they dumped 35 bodies near a prosecutor's meeting in Veracruz, a calculated message to law enforcement. They are not afraid of you. In 2012, when Mexican security forces launch a major operation against the CJNG in Guadalajara, El Mencho responds by ordering his people to erect dozens of burning vehicle barricades across the city. Major roads shut down. The whole city paralyzed. The military operation goes nowhere. El Mencho ghosts, and the CJNG keeps growing. By the mid-2010s, they control Jalisco, Colima, Guanajuato, Nayarit, and Veracruz. They're fighting the Zetas in the east, the Knights Templar in Michoacan, and various Sinaloa-affiliated groups across the country. They don't negotiate. They don't retreat. Their calling card is overwhelming force, precision targeting of rivals and authorities, and a willingness to escalate that consistently shocks even hardened observers. In 2015, they shoot down a military helicopter with a rocket launcher during a confrontation in Jalisco. A military helicopter with a rocket launcher. That's not cartel behavior. That's insurgency. The Mexican government can no longer pretend this is a law enforcement problem. This is a national security crisis. And through all of it, El Mencho is invisible. No public appearances, no flashy narco lifestyle, no interviews, no leaked videos, no parties caught on tape. While El Chapo was building a reputation that eventually made him the subject of a Netflix series and a Sean Penn profile in Rolling Stone, El Mencho was a ghost. Only a handful of photographs of him existed. The DEA had been tracking him since the early 2000s and still couldn't get close. He moved constantly, trusted almost no one, and compartmentalized his operations so thoroughly that even his own people rarely knew where he was. The $15 million bounty on his head, the highest ever offered by the US government for a cartel figure, produced nothing actionable for years, but the people around him were less careful. In 2014, his son Ruben, known as El Menchito, is arrested by Mexican authorities. He gets released, then rearrested, then released again. It becomes a pattern that tells you everything about how deep the CJNG's institutional corruption runs. Eventually, El Menchito is extradited to the United States in 2020, tried in Washington, D.C., and convicted in 2024 on murder, drug trafficking, and firearms charges. In 2018, his wife Rosalinda is arrested in Zapopan on money laundering charges, released on bail, then arrested again in 2021. In 2022, his brother Antonio, alias El Tony Montana, because subtlety is not a family trait, gets picked up in Guadalajara, extradited to the U.S. in 2025. His brother Abraham is arrested in 2024. His daughter's boyfriend, who had faked his own death and was living under an assumed identity in California, is arrested in Riverside in November 2024. El Mencho's entire family tree is being systematically dismantled, and he's still out there. Meanwhile, the CJNG evolves its business model. They go deep into fentanyl, becoming one of the primary suppliers of the synthetic opioid that is killing tens of thousands of Americans every year. This is not an accident. Fentanyl is cheap to produce, extraordinarily potent, and insanely profitable. The CJNG establishes supply chains stretching from Chinese chemical precursor suppliers through Mexican labs and across the U.S. border. By the early 2020s, the U.S. State Department estimates CJNG has active contacts in over 40 countries, including Australia, China, and across Southeast Asia. The avocado farmer's son from Michoacan is running a multinational narco corporation. In February 2025, the United States designates CJNG as a terrorist organization. The designation changes the legal framework for prosecuting their members and signals just how seriously Washington is taking the threat. And then, June 26, 2020, El Mencho makes what might be his boldest move yet. His people launch a coordinated ambush on Omar Garcia Harfuch, the chief of police of Mexico City and one of the country's highest-profile law enforcement officials. They hit his convoy with armored vehicles, grenades, and .50 caliber weapons in broad daylight in the middle of the capital. Garcia Harfuch survives, wounded. 2 of his bodyguards die. The message is so loud it echoes across every government building in Mexico. We can reach anyone, anywhere, anytime. Not even the capital is safe. For years, rumors of El Mencho's death circulate regularly. In 2022, Mexican press reports he's been killed in an internal CJNG confrontation. CJNG enemies spray messages around Guadalajara claiming he died of kidney failure. Every rumor is denied, every report unverified. He remains the phantom at the center of it all. Then, February 22, 2026. Mexican military forces locate El Mencho in Tapalpa, a small town in the state of Jalisco. In a special security operation, they move in. Nemesio Ruben Oseguera Cervantes, the avocado kid from Aguililla, the deported heroin dealer, the cop-turned-cartel boss, the man with a $15 million bounty on his head, is killed. He is 59 years old. He dies in the state he built his empire in a country he turned upside down for over 2 decades. The reaction is immediate and violent. CJNG cells across Mexico activate simultaneously. Cars are set on fire. Roads are blockaded. In Guadalajara and Jalisco, chaos erupts. More than 25 members of the Mexican National Guard are killed in 6 separate retaliatory attacks within 24 hours. U.S. and Canadian airlines cancel flights to Puerto Vallarta and Guadalajara. Tourists are stranded. Over 1,000 people are trapped at the Guadalajara Zoo and forced to sleep in buses. The U.S. State Department issues a shelter-in-place order for American citizens in the region. A man the government could never catch in life triggers a national emergency and death. They bury him in a golden casket in a Guadalajara cemetery. So what's the verdict? El Mencho was not glamorous. He was not charming or charismatic in any documented public way. He didn't do interviews. He didn't build a mythology around himself. What he built instead was a machine, disciplined, violent, globally connected, and structurally resilient enough that even his death doesn't end it. The CJNG existed before El Mencho became its sole boss, and it will continue without him. Whether a successor can hold the organization together, or whether the cartel fractures into warring factions, the way the Milenio cartel did when its own leadership collapsed, that's the question Mexico will be living with for years. One man, born in poverty, dropped out in 5th grade, deported twice, became a cop, built the most feared criminal organization in the Western Hemisphere, and died in the same state where he made his name. Was he a product of the system? Of poverty, corruption, and failed institutions? Or was he something darker? A man who chose violence at every fork in the road? Could Mexico have stopped him sooner, or was the institutional rot too deep? And now that he's gone, does anything actually change? Drop your thoughts below. This story isn't over.